One important aspect of central tendency data is the ability to graph that data. And there are different types of graphs or presentations. So you should learn the different approaches to visualizing the data. It's typical to see bar charts or what they call histograms or dot plots on the exam in the past, but now they seem to be emphasizing more the box plots and other options as well. So let's take a quick look and go through some of these examples and assess how they are created. The data ranges from 2 to 13, so I might start to draw on the horizontal axis. I'm going to go up by 2s. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and that's going to be my horizontal axis. And I'm going to put a dot, 1 dot for 2. I don't see any other 2s. 3, I see 1, 3. 4, I see 1, 4. 5, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to put 4 dots vertically up for the 5s. 6, I see 2 6s. 7, I see 4 7s. And I'm getting a little off the range here, but hopefully we can still see that. 8, and then 13. So that's something like what my dot plot would look like for this set of data in question number 1. Okay? How about a stem and leaf plot? We don't run into that too often. How would we go about drawing one of those? Well, again, I'm going to look at the data set here in number 3. And I notice my data ranges from kind of 32 up to almost 80. So I'm going to set the 10s, my larger power of 10 for the given numbers, into segments of 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. That's as high as we go. And I'm going to then put in the numbers for each of the data within those 10s group. So for all the 30s, well, there's only a 32, so I'll put a 2. For the 40s, I see a 4, a 5, and a 6. So I have these values for the 40s. That means 44, 45, 46 in the data. Okay? In the 50s, I see 51, 54, 55, 7, 8, and 9. In the 60s, we have 0, 3, 4. In the 70s, we have 0, 5, and 9. This would be a stem and leaf plot indicating all the data. So this is essentially the equivalent to all of this in a way that will hopefully help us see in more detail or more visually what the central tendency of the data is. We could also draw a box and whisper plot, or a box plot is typical on the exam. Let's work with number 5. So I notice I've got 5, 10, 15, 16 data points. And so the box plot for this data set would have a range of 26 to 45, which would be 45 minus 26 is a range of 19. We'd have an interquartile range that goes from our 28, the lower end of our box, to the top end of the box, the third quartile. That's called our interquartile range. That in this case is 34 minus 28, or 6. And we're starting to see this on the exam, so it's worth noting. Let's take a look at a histogram. So a histogram, well, it's very much like a dot plot. I'm going to check my range of values. They go from 40 up to 120. So on my horizontal, I'm going to put 40, 60, 80, 100, 120, okay? And within the 40s, I'm going to have 2 values. So that might be there. It's hard to draw the elements there. Sorry, not the best drawing, of course. But let's say that's 2 and 4 and 6 on the vertical. So there are 2 occurrences of values in the 40s. I take that back. There are 3 occurrences of values in the 40s. So my graph would look like that. Essentially, it's a bar chart, as we might casually call it. In the 50s, I see only one value, so my 50s would look like that, where my bar or my histogram go up to there. In the 60s, I see I've got 4 of them, so I go all the way up to 4 for the vertical bar in my 60s. Okay. And then I have nothing in the 70s, but in the 80s, I have 1 value. In the 90s, I have 2 values. And I continue to draw my bars. Again, much like we did the dot plots, but here it's these rectangular bars in place of it. Okay? 90s looks like was 3. Did I say there were 2? There are 3 of them. So let's adjust that height appropriately. In the 100s, there's 1. Nothing in the 110s. And then 2 values in the 120s. And that would essentially be my histogram of the data, which gives me an idea of the central tendency of the data. These seem to be bunched up in the middle, but there's a bunch here below it, more so than are higher. So in many cases, that might help you to discern pretty quickly. The average is going to be below this middle bunch. So if 80 is between 40 and 120, then the average here is probably closer to 70, somewhere a bit lower than that 80 central bunch. And that's how we can make good use of visualizing the data in central tendency problems. And you will have to be familiar with the different types of charts and graphs for central tendency.